In this bleak world of Cairn, the human race is near extinction. There are few left, and even fewer willing to resist both the forces of the Aetherials and the cult of Cthon. The Black Legion was one of the most infamous squads of the Imperial army before the Grim Dawn, and is now one of the last bastions of hope for humanity to survive this apocalypse. You can read about them in the faction window in-game. The Black Legion are the Imperium's elite, Death's Bannermen, sent forth to act out the Emperor's will with extreme prejudice. Legends of their valor intermingle with equally common tales of their cruelty and violence. Regardless of whether they are respected or feared, the Black Legion was the only Imperial regiment to escape the fallen capital following the Grim Dawn, and may now represent the only hope for humanity has left of ever fighting back. Right now they're set up in Homestead, an old farming community where Barnabas from Devil's Crossing sends you to look for food. On your way to Homestead, if you're carrying a few sticks of dynamite, you can enter the Pine Barrens where you'll find a few Black Legion soldiers stationed who need your help. You must be one tough slift to make it all the way out here on your own, Deathmark Caldress of the Black Legion. What brings you here, citizen? Yes, the Imperial elite, the conquerors of Venmar. You must be from the rural country. They didn't know much about us at Homestead either. The squad's been deployed out here to the Pine Barrens in order to hunt down the dangerous wildlife roaming around outside of Homestead. It's a grueling process, but someone's gotta do it. That's far enough. You entered a Black Legion camp. State your business. That's correct. We are the Death's Bannermen, defenders of the Empire. You are addressing Sergeant Valar of the Deathmarks. I take it you weren't in the capital when the Aetherials attacked. We were gravely outnumbered, facing a foe unlike any men had ever seen. The commander gave the only sane order there was: retreat. Many of us didn't make it out of there, killed, or worse, possessed. Used to think those that perished were the lucky ones, not so sure anymore with the dead rising. The Black Legion now is a shell of its former self. Even at its full strength, unable to take the hordes and hordes of Aetherials that attacked the capital. Now, it's trying to salvage the scraps of what's left of humanity. Once you reach Homestead, you'll be able to find some of Inquisitor Creed's journals. Remember him? We went over the first 6 entries of his on our first lore video on Warden Krieg. If you haven't seen that, read that, because we're going to go through the next 2 journal entries of his. Much time has passed since my last entry. Following my escape from Krieg's laboratory, I have raced against time and lost, passed through the darkness and flame, and witnessed a ruin of the world as I knew it. Even as I assumed key figures in the capital were likely to be possessed by the entities we now call Aetherials, I reasoned that it was only with support from within the capital that we could hope to thwart them. Any action that began outside the capital could be spun as a political rebellion and crushed with the Empire's own forces before the truth could be exposed. Thus, I cast the dice and raced towards the heart of Irulan, trying to conceal myself as best I could. Upon my arrival, I proceeded cautiously, booking a room at a squalid inn near the west gate in an effort to keep my arrival secret. Initially, I sought out old acquaintances, assuming if I could detect some change in personality or behavior, it might reveal possession. A few awkward reunions made it painfully obvious that years on the road carrying out my duties as an Inquisitor had left me out of touch and unable to discern whether any changes were the result of possession or just a passage of time and faded memories. The only gamble left then was to report back to the Citadel of the Luminari and see what came of it. I never made it there. Waiting until sunlight dwindled and crowds thinned in the streets below, I rose to leave, but was quite startled to see that a shadowy figure had somehow silently breached my room, evading all the wards set against intruders. This is how I came into cooperation with the First Blade. It was known that anyone of significance who fomented discontent or posed a real threat to the rule of the Emperor might be visited by the First Blade. I had never stirred such controversy, but I always imagined, if such an encounter took place, I could put up a respectable fight. I never got the chance. Taken unaware, I was disarmed before I even knew what was happening. Had he sought my death, I would not have even witnessed the killing stroke fall. However, it seemed more interested in answers instead, and in turn provided me with an account of his own events that confirmed my worst fears. The First Blade revealed that only days prior, he had been forced to turn his knives on the Emperor himself by his own command. Despite the myriad of safeguards protecting the Emperor, both mundane and arcane, he had become a host to an Aetherial. Through strength of mind, he had usurped his possessor long enough to summon the First Blade, command his own execution, and charge the assassin with ensuring that his son, the young prince, survived to reclaim the throne. His last command issued, the Emperor's consciousness slipped once again under the control of the Aetherial, and a desperate battle ensued. The First Blade reported that he believed the Emperor and the Aetherial within him had slain, but given his inexperience with these entities, could not say anything for certain. He relayed that he had secretly taken the prince and put them into hiding, but declined to elaborate. The First Blade said he intended to retire his imperial title and had chosen the name Ulgrim, which made me curious whether it was an intentional reference to the mythic character. A final troubling detail was that no proclamation of the Emperor's passing had been issued. Not only did this demonstrate that the Aetherials had sufficient control of the palace to conceal the death, but given that they couldn't hope to hide the Emperor's absence for long, it suggested the next phase of their operation was imminent. I strategized with Ulgrim long into the night, formulating a plan to counter the Aetherials, but ultimately we agreed that we could not defeat their conspiracy in time. The only course left was to gather whatever resources and people we could find, go to ground and weather the coming storm, then find a way to counter the invaders. We agreed that the Black Legion would be our best hope for securing allies. As a conscripted army of criminals, debtors, and political descendants bound to service, it seemed unlikely that the Aetherials would have any reason to infiltrate them when they can just control them indirectly through military high command. The next step was to discreetly make contact. If you try to talk to Captain Somner in Homestead at this time, you'll be greeted with,
"Welcome to Homestead. We could definitely use more capable hands around here. If you find yourself back out there and run into a smug smartass by the name Ulgrim, tell him he's late, as usual."
Ulgrim. That name was mentioned in Inquisitor Creed's notes just now. You might have found Ulgrim earlier, just outside of Burwich, where he comes across as just a cook that you rescue and bring back to Devil's Crossing, and he has a lot of stories for you. Prior to the Grim Dawn, I served a meal to some gentlemen in the capital who were deep in conversation about a remarkable new method of travel using arcane gateways. They said it would allow the Emperor's armies, stationed in the capital, to appear almost instantly in the furthest provinces. Imagine what lengths the Emperor's general staff would do to procure such a decisive military advantage. You know, hearing myself say it, it sounds very similar to that portal you used to rescue me from the swamp. Have you run into the Bloodsworn yet? This fanatical cult devoted to the supposed elder god Chthon? The cult has existed forever, some say since before recorded history. I always thought the myth of an elder god betrayed and gruesomely dismembered was too fantastical to be anything but the stuff of theater, but since the Grim Dawn, it seems that the cult has newfound power and desperate men flock to swell their ranks. When I was wandering the outskirts of Burwich, I came upon some cultists who pressed me to join their ranks. At first, they wouldn't take no for an answer, but I treated them to some healthy stew, and now they've troubled me no further. Never underestimate the power of good cooking. Ever consider a bowl of slith stew? Don't. They may eat us, and it seems only fair that we should eat them back. I tried boiling one once, and it ruined a set of pots and ladles. Incidentally, I heard a strange tale once that the slith were created by humans. The story went that the Emperor's general staff wanted an army that could fight effectively in the southern swamps. Horrific human experimentation led to the creation of a reptilian humanoid, but they were uncontrollable, escaped captivity, and began to breed out in the wilds. I'm sure that's just a legend, though. How much do you know of the former warden? Rumors of Krieg's strange and violent behavior even reached my ears in the distant capital. When he failed to respond to multiple summons, an agent was dispatched from the capital to resolve the situation. Unfortunately, the Grim Dawn was unleashed before the man could reach Krieg. At least, I assume that must be what happened. I served a follower of Drake once. Now, I don't normally judge a man based on his beliefs, but those people believe in some twisted stuff. The all-seeing eye, the hidden realm the witch gods supposedly reside in, how Drake is the watcher that guards the way. No wonder they're so uptight if they think someone is staring at them all the time. It's funny though, apparently someone was watching him after all. Not long after we parted ways, an Inquisitor took him in for questioning, and he was never seen again. At least that's what I heard. When I was young, I had the misfortune to witness a banquet that was thrown for 5 pathfinders of the biggest rover bands at the time. It was supposed to be a peace offering, but none of them was left alive. The government thought that the rovers would disband once their leaders were dead, but they just chose new ones and moved on. I regret how they were persecuted in the past, but it seems that generations spent roaming the wilderness and the back roads of these lands while evading agents of the Empire prepared them for the Grim Dawn. They seem to be weathering better than most and have not taken many refugees from the Empire that once hunted them. Did I tell you this one already? I once had to deal with a particularly rude dignitary from the capital who had even slighted the emperor. The man made a huge fuss about his food being bland, so I whipped him up a little chef's special, filled with my strongest spices. Let's just say he ran out of there spilling from both ends. Oddly enough, I heard he died the next day. I hope it didn't have anything to do with the spices I used. I've served more than a few men and women whose ambitions and lust for power exceeded their good sense. There are limits to the human achievement, and when we grasp beyond our ability, it inevitably leads to calamity. Sorry, that was a bit heavy for a mealtime conversation. What would I know? I'm just a cook. Don't discount the effectiveness of piercing weapons. They may not have the raw damage dealing power of a heavy mace or a brutal axe, but their ability to penetrate armor can be very effective against more heavily armored foes. At least, that's what I've heard, and, you know, my profession has made me pretty familiar with blades. Being a cook, I mean. Now, according to Creed's journal, Ulgrim is much more than just a simple cook, which would explain why some of his stories are so gruesome. You can find Ulgrim later in the Dead Man's Gulch on your way to Homestead, accompanied by a band of survivors down on their luck. You can open up a rift gate to help them get to Homestead, then you can talk to Ulgrim.
I'm going to check in with Creed here, but I suggest you speak to Captain Sommer. She's the Black Legion officer in charge of this sorry bunch. Look for the grumpy middle-aged hag in Black Legion.
Now the captain will be happy to answer any and all of your questions. But before we do that, we should talk to Inquisitor Creed first.
So much death. No end in sight.
If you have something to say, make it quick. I've long known of Ulgrim by his previous title, the First Blade, although I was fortunate not to have met him in his working capacity back then. It wasn't until the days prior to the Grim Dawn that I met him in person. It was our mutual awareness of the Aetherial conspiracy and individual inability to counter it that brought us together. In the end, we realized that the Aetherials already controlled too much of the government and could not be stopped. So we instead set out to gather resources and allies to weather the invasion and launch a resistance. Yes, the Emperor's spymaster and assassin. His name was stricken from all the records, his very identity erased so he could exist outside the boundaries of the law. This gave the Emperor great freedom in handling matters some would deem objectionable to the throne. All knew it, but none would dare bring it to the light, lest they have a meeting with the First Blade. He was truly unparalleled in his art, feared even by the Nightblades of the noble houses, many of whom have silently met their end at his hands. One might question the morality of his job, but not the ruthless effectiveness of his performance. I will say though, he did deliver a form of justice to many corrupt and vile men. He silenced many conflicts before they could grow into larger, bloodier ordeals.
I'll skip the pleasantries. Ulgrim tells me you're one tough slith, and right now that's what I need most. Will you fight for the Black Legion? You were joking, right? We are the Imperium's most infamous, if not elite, legion. Conscripted from criminals and political outcasts and tempered in the front lines of the Empire's most brutal wars. The only regiment of the Emperor's legions that has survived the massacre in the capital, if you could consider the losses we suffered surviving. I'd love to tell you our history, but I really have more important matters to attend to, such as the mission I need you for.
Completing a few of Captain Sommer's requests will eventually lead you to Fort Ikon, the old headquarters of the Black Legion, now overrun with Aetherials. Once you wipe out the Aetherials inside, you can talk to Inquisitor Creed to see what's going on.
Good, you've arrived. Things here are in worse shape than I thought. Betrayal, sabotage, call it what you will. We've been attacked from within. The Aetherials, it seems, have gotten a hold of the commander. Precisely. Based on the reports, Commander Lucius has been sending our men out on futile missions, thinning out the force's defenses. Then, once the watch was sufficiently weak, he opened the gates allowing the Aetherials to pour in. He was not counting on human ingenuity, however. Weapons Master Edric collapsed the front gates with some explosives, cutting off the enemy's forces. When we arrived with reinforcements from the south, the coward Lucius fled into the armory. Until those gates are cleared, we are stuck here. I need you to enter the armory and recover what's left of the heavy explosives. Use them to clear the rubble. But beware of Lucius. He has shed his human disguise in favor of a monstrous form, which I cannot even begin to describe. You will likely have to deal with him to get to the explosives.
Now, on your way to Commander Lucius, you'll come across a lot of notes that explain exactly what was happening at this fort before its downfall. After the explosion that destroyed the armory, I went back over this past week's reports and compiled this collection of excerpts, which I found to be relevant. They are pulled together and arranged in order of the events that took place. I do this in hopes that it will illuminate how this event happened and raise the questions of what might be done to avoid future attacks like this. That is, assuming we survive. Captain Frederick Blackwell. Report 1. Report from the North Wall Night Watch. While patrolling the upper wall, I witnessed a soldier enter the armory. I would not make note of it except that he appeared to have been looking around the courtyard to make sure none could see him as he entered the gated door. The torches were out in that area of the courtyard, so it's impossible for me to say who it was. Report 2. Report from the officer of the watch. Several men have gone missing and we suspect that they have deserted. A complete search of the fort and surrounding areas has ended with no sign of them, however. The scouts have found no sign of tracks and have concluded that the men never even left the fort. Report 3. Report from the Master of Arms. I have discovered 10 small casks and 5 large casks of black powder missing. It is difficult to account for the missing supply since only 5 people in the entire fort have access to the keys that would open the black powder storage. Commander Lucius headed the search himself after receiving the worrying report. Starting from the bottom levels all the way up to the top of the towers, nothing was found. This is my final report on the massive explosion that has destroyed the North Courtyard. It is intended to be read with the compiled notes pulled together from the past week. With the intent of establishing a damage report and the death toll, I assembled a squad of soldiers and led them into the shattered depths below Fort Ikon. The explosion appeared to have blown down into the sewers, making the smell in the armory ungodly. That in and of itself has made it almost impossible to go down there. The plumes of smoke reduced our vision and choked the air. Crumbling walls, supports and floors were in constant danger of additional collapse. The explosion appears to have been centered on a single large support below the armory. At the bottom of the devastation, we found several dead men, charred almost beyond recognition. They appeared to be the men who went missing earlier this week. My investigation indicates that the missing men were using the stolen black powder to make an opening into the sewers to make their escape. In closing of this report, I'd like to raise 2 concerns. The first is, one of the men was an explosives expert and should have been aware of the destructive potential of so much powder. By itself, I wouldn't give this detail a second thought, if not for my second concern. Another one of the men has been with the Black Legion for nearly 8 years with no signs of dissent or disagreement with command. In fact, he was due for a promotion to a commanding position soon. Something doesn't fit here. The tale that is painted indicates sabotage from within, but who would go to such lengths to frame these men? Without more information, I cannot say with certainty what is going on, but my gut tells me that there's more at play here than it at first appears. Captain Frederick Backnail. And then slaying Commander Lucius will result in him dropping an untitled note. I have successfully infiltrated the fort as you commanded. It is ironic that the commander of this garrison is one of the weakest minds I have ever encountered. There is so much turmoil and fear that resides within him. He was easy to manipulate and overwhelm. While I do have full control over his body, there is something in the region that tampers with direct communication, something tainted and ancient. Anything capable of such an act demands further investigation. I write this correspondence in the meantime so that another may look into this matter. Fort Ikon has proven to be a challenge for us, but now I understand why. The vast stores of weapons and war machines the humans have amassed is staggering. It is a wonder that they have not exterminated themselves in their endless pursuit of warfare and self-destruction. Nevertheless, everything moves according to our grand plans. I have already taken steps to sabotage their armory and planted evidence leading to several deserters. Nobody suspects my involvement. But the main reason I have deemed it necessary to report to you comes from a most unexpected discovery. The anomaly, the revealer of secrets, walks among these humans, and even now shares with them our plans. We have since adjusted our projections in this region, ensuring that anything the anomaly reveals is of no use to the human, but its knowledge of our ways could still prove detrimental to our success on this world. For now, I've begun sowing the seeds of distrust about the anomaly to the humans. Their fear is so great that they had it moved to the prison, where it remains. Once my sabotage is complete and the gates are open, Fort Ikon will fall. Then we can deal with the traitor as is fitting of such unprecedented betrayal. This note is really similar to the one that we found from killing Warden Krieg, one of the ethereal possessor's letters to a ethereal that is higher up in the chain of command. The event in the region that is stopping their communication is most likely the summoning of Ligorian just happening up north in the necropolis, and this anomaly that he refers to, the betrayer of secrets, is an Asteria of the outcast who is kept at Fort Ikon prison. She has a bunch of lore herself, but that will be saved for another video. But for now, that is everything about the Black Legion up to that point. So thank you for watching and have a great day. And I would like to thank my two members, Boomer2046 and Jakester, for supporting my channel, and also my supporter, Mr. Fatcat, for also supporting the channel, because I really do appreciate it, and I appreciate really all of you guys watching. So subscribe for more if you like this kind of stuff, because I will be making more. And have a great day once again.